Today I'm going to show you how to use Poolology to complete one of the oldest runout drills in the history of pocket billiards. There's no way to complete this drill with or without Poolology unless you understand how to account for squirt, swerve, and throw while you're aiming. Hence the words Art of Aiming on the cover of the Poolology book. You can't science your way to most runouts because you need a good feel and touch for how to slightly adjust your aim to pocket balls and get the cue ball in position for the next shot. This runout drill has been around since pocket billiards was invented, and it serves as a rite of passage for all intermediate pool players, regardless of how you're able to complete it. You certainly don't need Poolology to finish it, but I suspect you'll finish it faster if you understand how to use Poolology as your GPS guide during the drill. I also chose this drill for today's lesson because all the object balls have the same positional value of 25, which means the aiming fractions are the same for every ball, so there's no need to do any Poolology math between the shots. The math has been done in advance and the golf tees laid out on the rails, so you know exactly which cue ball object ball alignment value you're closest to at all times. If you did the wax on, wax off drills I suggested in my previous video, you already know the 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21 golf tee reference points, since I showed you how to never forget them. The tees are here to make it obvious on camera which Poolology number we use for each shot before we start making aiming adjustments. I also chose this drill because you simply can't blindly accept Poolology numbers as gospel, since you have to be all over the cue ball and constantly adjusting your speed to keep the run alive, which means you're always feeling your way around these known aiming references. You really have to grasp the art of adjusting your touch and feel to solve this puzzle. It's a good threshold exercise to make sure you're ready to advance to the next level. I call the various line of dots on the table the Tor-Lowry do-or-die lines, since that's who I learned them from, but pros have known about these lines since the beginning of time. These object ball, pocket ball lines are crucial to keeping your runouts alive. You will see shortly how runouts are ruined when you come to rest on the wrong side of one of these lines. I put them on the table to serve as a constant reminder of how important they are to this drill and in most runout situations. You need to bake these lines into your brain as much as the Poolology numbers and make them part of your goal on every shot. As bizarre and nerdy as this looks to the passerby, this is a right brain feel exercise. I splattered your left brain all over the table, so there's absolutely no reason to be doing any math or thinking about where the cue ball needs to end up. All the logic is blatantly obvious from the road signs and the lines on the road. You just need to let your right brain loose and let it feel its way around these T's and dots. Your brain knows why it failed, and it knows how to adjust for next time. So trust it. Don't think, just execute. The T's are the breadcrumbs to know where you started, and the lines are the grades on how well you executed. That's it. Now let's see how to run this rack out. I don't have time to rehash all the Poolology numbers, so I'm hoping you remember all the aiming references from my ABC 123 video, but here's a short refresher for a few of the numbers to jog your memory. For this drill, all the object balls have a positional value of 25, so the table in the upper left-hand corner shows the fractional values for the 25. Remember, you simply draw an imaginary line between the center of the cue ball and the center of the object ball to see where that line crosses the row of diamonds. Each golf tee represents a specific fractional value you need to aim for on the object ball to make it using a rolling cue ball with no side spin. These images will be our starting points before we make any necessary aiming or cueing adjustments to pot the ball and get position. Before I start confusing you, I want to remind you Poolology works. The book explains as long as the shot allows the cue ball to be rolling at a nice medium speed when it contacts the object ball with no side spin, you can use Poolology to determine where to aim since the math produces a slight overcut to account for cut-induced throw, so you should end up with a nice center cut entry into the pocket. Here our position value is 25 and the alignment value is 12, so we know if we gear our routine and aim at the edge of the object ball, we should make the shot. Unfortunately, to complete the drill, you can't use a rolling cue ball with no side spin on the majority of the shots, because you'll end up colliding with other balls or end up with a leave that prevents you from running out. So you must take corrective action to make sure you avoid other balls and make sure your cue ball ends up in a favorable position to make the next shot and continue the run out. One solution, which still allows you to aim for the Poolology fraction advertised in the book, is to draw out of the shot. You just need to make sure you hit the cue ball hard enough and low enough so the cue ball is not sliding when it contacts the object ball. In this example, I hit the cue ball directly below the center at 6 o'clock and easily avoided the 9 ball. However, this may or may not leave you in a favorable position to continue the run out. Using stun action is a very useful tool for this drill, but you have to remember for stun shots the cue ball is sliding into the object ball, which means there's going to be additional contact-induced throw. Therefore, you need to aim a little bit thinner to avoid sending the object ball into the long cushion. Anytime you hit the long cushion, it's likely you're not taking CIT into account. Another draw solution to use is 8 o'clock cueing. Depending on your speed and how much English you use, you may or may not need to make a tiny aim adjustment. Because the cue ball is spinning with left English, it rebounds down the table away from the row of object balls, which may be desirable if you can't reach the cue ball if you leave it on this side of the table. This is useful action on big tables. Another solution which slightly narrows the rebound angle off the cushion is a stun follow shot with outside English at, say, 10 o'clock, which also requires a slight aim adjustment to take into account deflection. Anyway, this action tends to send the cue ball closer to the other long rail, but not as far down the table as the draw action, which comes in handy often during this drill. There's all sorts of solutions, but another handy solution for keeping the cue ball near the row of object balls is to use a draw shot with right-hand English. In this example, I use 4 o'clock, which works well on my table and equipment. It draws it away from the 9 ball, but the right spin negates the rebound angle and the cue ball comes back almost directly across the table. You have to figure out what works for your table and equipment. I'm a huge fan of Tor Lowry, and he preaches stun action for controlling the cue ball and harps on using center, center high, and center low to minimize the effects of squirt, swerve, and spin-induced throw, which I agree with. But whenever you use stun, which means the cue ball is sliding into the object ball, it causes contact-induced throw, especially near half-ball hits, which means you need to adjust when using Poolology. When hitting the cue ball off-center with any sort of speed, the cue ball deflects or squirts off the intended aim line, and in this case causes you to end up hitting the object ball into a thicker than desired contact point. Here I'm using outside English to get the cue ball to spin off the side cushion and come back towards me, but the cue ball squirted into a thicker 5/8 ball hit instead of the desired half ball hit, which caused the object ball to contact the long cushion before reaching the pocket. Whenever you are straight or flat relative to the pocket, any spin you add to the cue ball will throw the object ball offline in the opposite direction due to the friction between the balls. The stickier the balls, the more pronounced the effect, so you must take the spin-induced throw into account when you know it's in play. The effect is not as pronounced at steeper angles, but still must be taken into account when you aim. Here's an example where I throw a ball out of the pocket using extreme spin from a steeper angle. You need to remember when using extreme spin with outside English, you should aim a touch thicker because the object ball will be thrown towards a short rail. There's still CIT, especially with a half ball hit, and sometimes the SIT cancels the CIT, but with extreme spin, SIT can dominate and you must aim a bit thicker. When using inside English and stun at the same time, it has a compounding effect on throwing the object ball. In this case, both interactions with the object ball tend to throw the object ball towards the long cushion. In these situations, you need to learn to aim even thinner than when using either cueing action by themselves. Most of the time when you use inside English, you should aim much thinner than the Poolology book says with a rolling cue ball and no English. I want to conclude this section with an extreme example of a miss using skid because it emphasizes the main point of this video. It's hard to see in the other examples since the reasons for the misses are not obvious, and it's hard to see the subtle aiming adjustments I'm making to fix the aim point. I have added a ton of chalk at the point where the cue ball and object ball are going to collide, which is going to cause the object ball to skid off into the cushion, like a stun shot on steroids. I'm using standard Poolology math just to show you how badly I missed the shot. Now I will show you how much I have to adjust my aim to make the skid shot using a rolling cue ball with no side spin. The next time someone tells you they have a perfect aiming system or a computer rolls into town claiming they have a solution for aiming, set the shot up and watch their circuits blow. They will cry foul, but the reality is thousands of bars and pool halls have balls that stick together like this, and you have to know how to adjust when you come across this situation. The Poolology book calls for a half ball hit, but I fixed it by aiming for an 8th ball hit instead. This is what I mean by the art of Poolology. When you hear me say these Poolology numbers are breadcrumbs and not Bible verses, this is what I mean. The Poolology numbers are ideal starting points and breadcrumbs you can use to remember what you were thinking when you planned the shot out, but the actual aim points you go for may not resemble what the book calls out. At the end of the day, Poolology provides the foundation and reference points for aiming balls, but the final result is your very own creation, unique to your stroke, your aiming ability, and your table and equipment conditions. The same logic applies for cueing. Most of the Poolology book is spent explaining the behavior when you hit the cue ball along the center line with running English. Brian talks about how the math still works as long as you don't add side spin and the cue ball is not sliding into the object ball. But that leaves most of the real estate of the cue ball to the art of aiming. So you have to know how to take contact-induced throw, spin-induced throw, deflection, and swerve into account when you aim. This takes a lot of table time and practice. This is where you develop the touch and feel you need to master the art of aiming and to get to the next level because it's the secret to running out. There are a lot of good videos explaining how to aim with side spin, but the best one I've seen is Dr. Dave's Got English video and his System for Aiming with Side Spin DVD, SAWS for short. He certainly does a much better job of explaining how to aim with side spin than I do. After all, he's a doctor, and I'm just a bonehead from Cincinnati who got loose on YouTube. Pay particular attention to how he pivots around the natural pivot point of the cue stick using fronthand English and backhand English. It really does take a lot of the guessing game out of aiming and allows you to use the Poolology reference lines more often than just parallel shifting the cue stick, which I do in this video to make cueing adjustments more obvious. I've added links to Dr. Dave's material to the video description for your reference. So let's revisit the drill with the case where the next object ball is more towards the center of the table and discuss the cueing options and aiming adjustments to get shape on the next ball. Remember, if you try to use conventional Poolology logic, you're going to stop the runout in its tracks before it starts. So when you come across a shot during the drill, you must have the mindset you need to adjust your cueing and possibly aim to avoid colliding with the tin ball. One of the options you can use without adjusting your aim is to stay along the center line of the cue ball and just draw out of it. Remember, you need to hit it low enough and firm enough so the cue ball is not sliding into the object ball, which is a stun shot. When using draw, just be sure you do not get away from the center line of the cue ball, which is very easy to do if you're not getting any feedback on your contact point. When you do use any type of stun shot, you must remember to aim slightly thinner than the standard Poolology reference point because stun causes contact-induced throw, which will send the object ball into the long rail if you don't account for it. It might be hard to see here, but I had to aim outside the edge of the object ball to pocket it. When you need to get away from the center of the cue ball, you need to take throw into account. Since I'm cueing to the left, the cue ball is going to squirt to the right, which means it's going to send the object ball into the rail with a thicker hit. But since the cue ball is spinning left, it also throws the object ball to the right. So in this case, they cancel each other out, and I can keep my original aim point. This is the gearing effect Dr. Dave talks about in his videos. This is a similar case where I'm cueing higher on the cue ball to add some follow action, but I'm still left to center and spinning the cue ball with left English, so it's going to squirt a little bit to the right. But I felt the spin was severe enough I had to aim just a tiny bit thick to make sure the spin-induced throw didn't throw it into the short cushion. Notice the nice action of the cue ball off the side cushion. While I have the hood open, I'll show you this works for inside English as well. I'm adding right follow English, which squirts it into a thinner than desired hit, but the right spin-induced throw sends it back online. Notice the cue ball rebounds closely to the far side of the object ball. It's not useful for this drill, but you may need to play shape on the tin ball for the side pocket, for example. This may be hard to see on camera, but here's a case where I have to aim thinner than advertised because I know the cut-induced throw will send the object ball left, and the right inside spin-induced throw will also send it left. I do have some squirt to the left, which sends the object ball right, to negate some of this, but not enough to just use the advertised aim point from the book. This is the art of aiming, and what goes on in my head whenever I'm adding side spin to the cue ball. Note how far right the cue ball rebounds. Pocketing balls by taking into account squirt, swerve, and throw is only half the equation. You also need to understand how to string balls together, which means you have to pay attention to where the cue ball comes to rest. This is why I put the various do or die lines on the table. Here's an example of a failed runout where I managed to pocket the first ball and even make the cue ball come back towards me, but the runout is ruined because the cue ball came to rest on the wrong side of the tin ball pocket line. Sure, I can use Poolology to make the next shot, which I immediately see as the 3/4 ball hit, but there's no way I can avoid the 8 ball by going around it or with extreme draw. I could try a tricky Z-bank, but that's not the point of this exercise. I need to pay attention to the leave when I plan the shot so I can come to rest on the right side of the pocket line. Here's a much better example where I pocket the 12 ball using stun draw, although I almost miss it because I didn't aim thin enough to account for CIT. But fortunately I made it, and this time the cue ball ends up on the correct side of the 10 ball pocket line. So I assess the situation from here, and I see I'm between the 6 and 7 aim lines, so using Poolology I'm thinking I'll be aiming between the 3/4 ball and 7/8 ball. Since I decided to stun it again, I aim a touch thinner using the 6 aim line to allow for CIT, which ends up with a nice rebound off the cushion, and the cue ball rolls past the 8 ball pocket line into another 3/4 ball hit, which I can easily pocket using standard Poolology rolling cue ball with no side spin action, directly on the 6 aim line. Basically, you just repeat this 3-ball sequence over and over again until you can run all 7 balls. You can make this drill as difficult as you wish by adding more balls or making them in rotation or moving back to the 30-yard line where the shots are harder because there's less room on the rails and the side pockets are always in the way. You should learn to walk before you run, so start out just making all the balls in any corner without missing. This will help reinforce the Poolology numbers, which you'll probably need anyway. Then set the goal of making all the solids in one corner and all the stripes in the other corner. Eventually you should be able to make all the balls in order, or better yet, make all the balls in rotation. This drill is not easy, and it can be very frustrating at times. If you are new to pool or just learning Poolology, it could take you a month or more to learn the basics, as well as all the nuances of squirt, swerve, and throw, and how to account for all of them on a variety of shots, as well as getting shape on the next shot. The landing zones are quite tiny and your cue ball is always rolling across them, so your touch must be excellent in addition to your pocketing skills. It's not impossible to complete this drill, and I just showed you all the tools you need to complete the drill. But you can't teach your right brain what a runout feels like by watching videos and reading books. The only way to really learn how to run out is doing it over and over again on a pool table under a wide variety of situations to let your right brain experience what a runout feels like. If you do push through to the other side, you will have reached a new level of pocketing skill which translates quite well to almost any pocket billiard game. So good luck with the drill and creating a whole new set of pictures in your head that you can reference for the rest of your pool life. Thanks for watching. Until next time, this is Maddie and the Natty wishing you memorable pictures in your head.